I also did a stool test on day 1 to look at my gut microbiome. I should back up a second and say, before this experiment, I was not doing what I'm doing now, where I'm primarily carnivore. I was probably doing keto 60% of the time and having a lot of vegetables. And I was not carnivore prior to this. Okay. So I want to let the audience know that's why it's important to state that. Now I am. But I did the experiment. So I did 90 days of carnivore, and the couple of interesting things happened. Let's start with the stool test. When I submitted the stool test on day 1, I got the results back about 3 weeks into my carnivore experiment. And when I read the report, it looked at my gut diversity. And we know that the more diversity in your gut microbiome in general, the healthier you are. That's the name of the game, diversity. My diversity, when I tested on day 1, came back as average. It was okay. It wasn't bad. It wasn't great. It was average. And the lab report gave me some recommendations to increase my gut diversity. And on that report, Jesse, it said less keto, less red meat, more plants, more fiber, more polyphenols, essentially more of a plant-based diet. What did I do? The complete opposite. I was doing carnivore, and I was full on in carnivore already 3 weeks in, going for my 90 days. So you would think that by not listening to what the lab said and doing the complete opposite and eating no fiber, no carbs, no plants, no vegetables, no polyphenols, that when I retested on day 90, it's going to be a disaster. Well, I retested on day 90 right before I broke carnivore, got the results back. And here's the interesting thing. Everything in my gut microbiome improved. My diversity improved. Not just that. 7 core bacteria showed up on my day 90 test that did not show up on day 1, and 5 keystone bacteria showed up on day 90 that was not there on day 1, doing the complete opposite of what most people think you need to do to improve gut health. I didn't have any fiber, Jesse. I didn't have any plants. I just ate red meat. I ate poultry. I had eggs. I had goat cheese, all animal products for 90 straight days. So that was the gut report. You want to ask a question on that before I get to the labs?
Let's talk about that before we move on. I think this was the most interesting piece for me to see this change. What do you think it was? Again, no fiber. Everything that we conventionally view about the microbiome is being shattered by this. And in all fairness, we have to throw the fact that diversity is good into the mix as well, because this is shattering everything. Your diversity did get better, and by conventional terms, that is a good thing. But what we're learning from this experiment is that maybe, some of these assumptions we have aren't even true. So this just shatters everything and makes for an unsturdy foundation in a good way. It's time to look deeper at this stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the chief scientific officer of this company that I did the lab test with was just surprised because I told him what I was doing. And he's like, I need to hop on a Zoom call with you to go over the results. And I did. And he was just blown away. He said it changed his whole perspective on how we view the gut microbiome. And this guy has spent 20 plus years in the space. I actually recorded that and published that in the video for the audience to watch. YouTube.com, just type in Ben Azadi Carnivore. It's the first video.
We'll link it up.
Yeah, thank you, Jesse. And, I Dr. Pampa, who you had on your show, he kept asking me for months, did you get your results back? Do you get your results back? Because he was so interested in those gut microbiome results. And he was in Miami. We were recording some content together. He was coming over to my house, and he came over, and literally 5 minutes before he got here, the results came in. So we sat down in my office and recorded a short video, and I asked him why he thinks my diversity improved doing the complete opposite. And I agree with what his thoughts are. And here's what we think. We think the stress of removing all these plant toxins and fiber, the stress of being in continuous ketosis and just eating meat, it was a change to my gut microbiome, a stress that created diversity, more diversity. It forced the good bacteria to adapt and flourish. And then it created a scenario where the weak or bad bacteria did not survive. It kind of starved them out, right? So the change and the aggressive nature of this change and the stress, and this is a positive stress, we believe created this diversity in the gut microbiome. Now, I didn't stick with it. So I would hypothesize that if I did stick with this carnivore diet, strict continuous ketosis for 6 months or 12 months or 2 years, I would hypothesize, although I don't know this to be true, that I'd start to see the opposite results because then my body starts to adapt. And I think the change is the most important thing. It's the variation. This was a big change for my gut microbiome. So, Jesse, I think that's what did it.
And have you had the same test done since? I'd be
No.
curious a year later, going back to, again, you mentioned your diet now is more carnivore, but what's happened with those different populations you've gained over that year?
Yeah, it's a good time to retest. Yeah. So here's what I'll do. When I come back on your podcast, I will have those results and we could go over the second results of that. The third results of them. Yeah.
Sounds good. And in theory, do we think the bacteria are feeding on the animal products? Or is it just a die-off and then a regrowth of the good guys? And an expansion, obviously, of new species too. But this might not be an area you're familiar with, but do you know if bacteria are feeding on animal products as well?
I think they're feeding off the butyrate from being in ketosis, right? The beta hydroxybutyrate, great for the gut. I don't know if they're necessarily feeding off like the animal protein. I'm not a gut microbiome specialist. It would be a good question for somebody who comes on your show. But the butyrate for sure, I know, great for the gut. And then the fact that my glucose levels and insulin levels were pretty stable. Like I know a lot of these bad bacteria feed off of high levels of sugar. Of course, Candida feeds off of high levels of sugar. And I was starting off a lot of these bad bacteria. So I think the butyrate played a big role there. And the fact that my sugars were so optimal that these bad bacteria didn't have a chance to flourish.
All right, I want to come back to the experiment. 90 days, you basically gave the gut microbiome a break in a way by narrowing down your diet. Diversity increased. It got healthier. Now that you're back on more of a quote unquote normal diet, how do you look at the microbiome? Are you including fermented foods, probiotics, fiber? I'm assuming not the latter, but how do you look at the microbiome as a whole? And are you doing anything to establish that in a healthy way?
You know, I still don't understand the gut microbiome, to be honest with you. I just feel like we're just in like the early stages of really understanding it. But I like the idea of retesting, like you mentioned, and seeing what's happening now with this new change. I love fermented foods. I think fermented foods are great. These prebiotic foods, feed the good guys, big fan of it. Now, if you have histamine issues and you're histamine intolerant, you want to go really slow with fermented foods like sauerkraut and kimchi and kefir, but I like them and I have them from time to time. I do have fiber when I have those, but outside of that, I'm not really having fiber with the exception of that flex day because I'm having fruit, I'm having carbs, I'm having my favorite masa corn tortilla chips, which is seed oil free beef tallow, which is fiber. And that's usually what I have on a flex day. But my idea around the gut microbiome, I still believe that stressing it is beneficial through dietary changes, through fasting, through sauna, through cold exposure. I think stressing the gut microbiome is beneficial. I've seen that to be the case for myself. I've seen that with other people. But I don't know. Like some people could eat fiber and they're going to increase their gut microbiome diversity. They're going to see improvements. Some people do the complete opposite. Me, they improve their gut microbiome. I don't know, Jesse. Like, where do you stand with the gut microbiome? Because you've interviewed a lot of people, and to me, I'm still kind of confused about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's an area of interest, and I definitely talk to a lot of people about it, but I don't have it figured out by any means.
Me too.
And
man.
my
I'm there with you.
perspective on a lot of things in this realm continues to change. So, yeah, I'm just continuing to, read about it and ask my guests about it and learn, but a lot to learn in that realm.
Unlearn and relearn. That's the space we're in right there.
If you enjoyed that clip, you're going to want to head over here and catch a full episode. I'll see you over there.
I did the experiment. So I did 90 days of carnivore and a couple of interesting things happened. I dropped 6% body fat, meaning a total of 6% body fat reduction during the 90 days. And I didn't even realize that I needed to lose those 6% body fat for my body.